Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming Composec seminar today. As the world's first forum dedicated to security components, we are honored to gather the world's most famous component suppliers around the world. Within today's seminar, you will hear lots of products and technology trends in these from major security brands. And now I would like to introduce our first keynote speaker, Petkevich. Danny is currently the director of Video and Vision Business Unit from Texas Instruments. Texas Instruments is a leader of IC chip suppliers around the world, supporting the most products and the technical support from analog to digital. So now let's welcome Danny to deliver his speech. Why are no IP camera shipping? Secret to mass deployment.
Good morning. I'm actually representing two different groups today. So one is, as you can see, I'm the director for TI's Video and Vision Business Unit out of Houston, Texas. But also, I'm going to be representing the PSIA. I'm the vice chairman of a standards body for IP cameras, and that's also one of the things I'm going to be talking about today. Also, I like to have interactive sessions. So if you have a question during the maybe a slide or two, just raise up your hand and we can talk about it, because someone else probably has a similar question. Okay, so let's look at the world. You guys are very familiar with this. This is the traditional analog world. You know, it's very centralized. It's sort of a walled garden today. It's not distributive. It's usually a separate network, which is an analog one. And then you have the world in which you have IP. You know, the whole data network has changed the way things are working, and you're seeing lots of new devices that are coming out. A lot of them from the IT industry that's moving into the IP industry, and it's really changing the way people are looking at security. Even within large enterprises, they're saying, why do I have two networks, an IP network and a security network? Why don't I have just one network and really, reduce the cost there? So one of the things I'm going to try to address today is, why aren't IP cameras really taking off? And if you guys are familiar with the, standard, this is a marketing sort of slide, how technology diffuses, we're way past the innovator stage. We're sort of in the early adopter, moving to the early majority stage. So what are the market conditions for this, right? We've talked about the stage. One of the things is a lot of the CCTV or traditional analog companies, they're adding expertise for IP. It's still not an easy thing for a lot of these, sort of older companies. And then you have some IT type companies like the Ciscos of the world who are moving into this space too. So you have this sort of convergence going on. The other thing is IP solutions still seem to be a bit cost prohibitive, both from an endpoint standpoint and then from a deployment standpoint and the ability to develop the technology. So those are some of the conditions that are going on. And then what are some of the things that are causing this technology not to diffuse very well? Well, first of all, there's no standards. Okay, and I'll talk a little bit about standards in particular today, but I have a nice slide coming up that really shows the problem. So really, it's about simplifying the installation and the management of IP devices in an IP network. And the other one is, the beauty of IP is you can add a lot of functionality. Now, one of the problems when you add functionality, you add a lot of complexity. And when you add complexity, it's much harder to diffuse the technology. So we'll talk a little bit about that. The other one is the affordability and the ability to move these type of new innovations out to the customers very quickly. So I call this the IP management challenge. So you guys are probably very familiar with this sort of topology. You've got analog cameras hooking up back to some box. It could be a network video recorder or a hybrid DVR. You might have a digital video server in there. And then you have a whole bunch of suppliers of technologies. For example, you might have a Pelco camera. Pelco just announced having OV, Object Video Analytics, in it. You might have a new Sony. Sony just announced an H.264 HD camera at the last show. You've got Cisco and Linksys in there. You might have a D-Link camera with some PTZ. You might have a Brand X, no-name IP camera with a non-standard MPEG-4 encoder. INQ Vision, they've got a 5-megapixel camera. Bosch, they'll have their own video analytics. Axis will have MPEG-4. How do I get all this stuff to work together? That's the big challenge today. Then, let's move it on. You have a bunch of video management systems. You have proprietary ones from Divatel, Pelco, Genetec, Milestone, Nuho. You got a million different versions of that. Then you add storage into it, all these type of remote devices. You add access control. You see the problem? Trying to get all this stuff to play together is not easy. It's not easy at all. And what people are doing is very simple. I use my cameras with my boxes and my proprietary management system. And that doesn't scale very well. Also, you don't have the interplay of all the devices coming together and best-of-breed devices winning. So, the goal is we want to make plugging in an IP camera as simple as plugging in an analog camera. You could also say access control or any of those type of things. You want to make it that simple. You just plug it in and it works. Right? You plug in an analog camera today, it works. You plug in an IP camera, you don't even get video streaming out of it, right? The experience isn't there. So what are some of the things? Well, adding a device to a network, ensuring compatibility, controlling the device, receiving information, managing the device, securing the device, intrusion versus access control. So why do we need a standard? First, it'll increase the rate of adoption. I think the other thing that's very important, specifically for a lot of the Asian manufacturers, is you can now start playing where you'd be shut out before, right? If you weren't a Pelco or a Honeywell or an Axis, they wouldn't enable you to be able to play because they'd have to add your special camera, right, to an Axis or a Genetec or a Milestone, right? They'd have to put special support in their video management system for you, right? So I think that's one of the key benefits. For the customers, it's cheaper to install, lower cost of ownership. This is probably the most important. You hear this from the system integrators. They have to have an expert for every type of camera or video management system. This is a big pain for them. They have to add a lot of extra people. Okay. Also, different types of subsystems, so from storage subsystems to access subsystems to camera subsystems. Now it'll be easier to play. And the last one is users. The end users are starting to demand this. They say, I bought my access camera, but I have this new megapixel camera or this new video analytics camera. I want them to play together. How are you going to do that for me, Mr. System Integrator? So it comes back to us. Well, we're the semiconductor providers, but you guys who make the end equipment to sort of start solving these problems. So that's one of the things I'm going to try to address, and specifically one of the ways is through something called the Physical Security Interoperability Alliance. How many of you have heard of this standards body? Okay, 2. Not so many.